Righty, very good. See, perfect. Alrighty, so it seems that everyone's kind of settled in. I do believe the other presentation is the technical pitch, if I'm not mistaken. But if you are in here, we will be going over the STAR method today. And what that is, what that entails, and which component it will kind of align with a little bit more. But yeah, before we begin, I did just want to briefly introduce myself and our other presenter. My name is Milagro Ramos. I'm from SDSU, California Mesa. I'm the outreach coordinator for the College of Engineering. I'm also a former Mesa student myself. B was actually my director when I was in middle school. So it's been really nice to be able to kind of work with her on a different, kind of like on the other side of the table. And back when I was in Mesa, I was also an NEDC kid. So I'm able to relate and empathize with the students, but things have changed since like I was in NEDC, but like a lot of the same like stress and pressure is the same. But it's been really interesting to see how the challenge has evolved, and we're just going to be talking about the different ways it's evolving today.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Amy Gonzalez. I'm an outreach student assistant for SDSU. I also attend SDSU and I major in electrical engineering. So, hi, everyone.
Alrighty. So to get us started, so quick view of the agenda. We're going to talk about what is the STAR method, what are the origins for this particular technique. Then we'll move on as to why we're using this technique specifically for symposiums and symposium presentations. We're going to go ahead and break down STAR as it is mnemonic. Each letter does represent something, and it's just really easy to remember that way. And then lastly, we do have an activity for all of you to go ahead and try it out. And practice STAR so that you can bring it back to your sites and teach others how to use STAR in their presentations. Alrighty, so to begin, I know many people don't know what the STAR method is. They hear STAR method and they're like, oh no, what does that mean? So originally the STAR method originated as an interview technique. Specifically, it is a behavior interview technique. So this is used by employers to kind of see how past behaviors will essentially predict future behaviors. So STAR kind of helps communicate because of the way it is meant to tell a story. When we kind of break it down, it'll help explain behaviors and emotions, past roles and actions, and any skills or techniques that you've learned related to those past roles and actions when used in a job interview setting. The most important thing to remember about STAR is that it is very, very heavy about the context and details. The more context and details that you can provide when telling your STAR story or responding in a STAR way, the better, because it helps employers draw out these details a little bit better. So, for example, employers might ask questions that deal with overcoming challenges, your ability to learn, time management. On the surface, a lot of these questions or prompts seem very just kind of like, all right, this is what they want to know about, so I'm going to tell them what they want to know about. In reality, that's not what they're actually asking. So when employers ask, for example, when it sounds like they're asking about overcoming challenges, tell me about a time when you experienced an unexpected change or event at work or school. What they're really asking about is your flexibility and your adaptivity. So if you have a plan and something gets thrown into that plan and it ruins it, or something comes up that is going to interfere with something, they want to know how well you can readjust, readapt, reprioritize. Can you work with that punch that's been given to you? And how well can you work with other people? Can you bring people on to kind of help you lighten the load? If they ask you a question regarding your ability to learn, maybe perhaps give me an example about when you learn to use a new piece of technology or a skill at work. They're more kind of asking about your learning potential, how willing you are to learn about new things. Are you willing to work with complex problems? Are you okay with learning new procedures? Are you open to it? Can you ask questions? So it's less about like how fast you learn it and more like how willing you were to learn it. And then lastly, if they're talking about time management, they may be asked, tell me about a time when I can't read. Tell me about a time when you were working with others and had to manage conflicting demands to meet your goals. So again, this sounds like a time management question, when in reality, what they're really asking for is how well you balance your responsibilities. We all have several conflicting responsibilities. So by asking that question and the way you answer it helps employers determine how likely you are to follow through on commitments and reliably fulfill duties. Like, are you able to prioritize and delegate if you must? So that's where STAR comes into play. By answering questions in the STAR method during an interview, it helps you communicate all of these kind of like underlying questions while still kind of talking about your time management and your learning ability and your ability to overcome challenges. All right.
Okay, so why STAR method? Why use this technique at all for a symposium? So I have some personal experience. And next slide, please. And Milagro, can you switch it to the next slide, please? All right, so like I said, I have some personal experience in research poster applications. One of the things I noticed that the STAR method helped me a lot is provide a clear explanation of my research. Usually your research topic tends to be difficult or confusing for others, and STAR method helps you organize that. All right, and another thing, oops, there you go, thank you. Another thing that I noticed is the STAR method helps align like the rubric that your symposium may have. For example, this summer there was a criteria of what they wanted, and the STAR method basically aligned with everything that they were asking for. So that was great. It made my life a whole lot easier. And also, there's a thing to notice as well, is that judges tend to have the same questions that the STAR method is asking. So it was easy for me to just basically copy paste of what I already know. Next slide, please. There you go. All right. Now, in more detail, other things that I noticed, like I said, clarity of communication, easier to communicate research, or your project details easier, as well as enhanced preparedness for questions. It's easier to address important topics instead of scrambling around and trying to figure out what to respond. And as well as there's measurable impact and reflection. So what I mean by that is that you're able to reflect on the results that you've gotten and how that applies to the real world. And as well as, like I said, aligning with the presentation topics, align with the key components needed. It's like I said, it's a whole lot easier because you already have the structure and it's just putting it on your poster. And overall increased confidence because you know what you're talking about. You're organized, you're ready for any question, you know how to respond because there's that STAR method in the background for you. And lastly, simplified presentation creation. So the process of developing the research poster is simple, not that difficult. But yeah, and next slide. And here's an example of a symposium event, their criteria that they wanted. I attended Abercrombie's convention, and if you see in the green box in the bottom, the first one, it says background was clear and provided a relevant and concise overview of previous research and informed the project's hypothesis and objective. Now, you'll notice when we go more into detail how these things that they're asking, it's the STAR method. You're just checking off. Oh, yeah, I already said that. Or, oh, yep, I already implemented that. So that's great.
Alrighty. So now we actually get to start breakdown. What does each letter mean? Why do we keep saying STAR method, STAR method? So to kind of reiterate what Amy was saying, the point of STAR is because it is an interview technique. The symposium is essentially a presentation / interview. So after you kind of give that first verbal abstract, usually it's about 2 to 3 minutes, the judges or other attendees are going to have questions about your work, your presentation. So it is very much like an interview, and thus STAR becomes the easiest way to communicate all the information that you need to communicate. So we're going to quickly kind of go through what each letter means and what exactly each of the letters are looking for. And then after this, we'll go ahead and not break out, but we'll go ahead and try a STAR activity and see how well we can reformat information.
All right,
Oh, there we go.
So the first letter, S. So this is situation, setting the scene. You're starting with the short background and context. You're explaining who, what, where, and when your subject is crucial. You focus on a specific event or situation. You're not just generalizing. You're only referencing relevant info. Because I've noticed some students and other in the research poster presentations, they tend to ramble a lot and don't get down to the specifics.
Mute myself. There we go. All right. So the T in STAR means that you are going to start listing out your task. You're going to describe your role. So when doing STAR, after you've given the context, it's like the where, the why, you were continuing to kind of go down this plan of action. You're going to list out your plan. What tasks did you have to do? Who was in charge of them? Why perhaps? Were there any limitations that you had to take care of? So say perhaps you had to keep a budget in mind. That might be something that you need to bring up. Well, I was in charge of sourcing the sensors, but I did have to keep in mind that I only had $25 to spend. So this is all I could do for this particular model. So just, making sure that you outline the responsibilities, maybe a little bit of explaining why different people or why you were assigned that responsibility. A kind of great way to relate it back to everyday life for students. For group assignments before they actually get started, usually they have like a sit down and they go, all right, you are better at writing, so you're going to take care of the writing. You are better at the presentation slide, so you're going to do the slide deck. Excuse me. You and me are going to do the research, so on and so forth. Everyone has a role or a job, and maybe they were just kind of like assigned that role, but other times it does play to their strengths. So we want to know all that information.
All right, for actions, let me go back one slide. If it lets me, there you go. All right, for actions, this is where you explain what you did. This is where the chunk of your work or explanation will be at. So you go into the specific steps of you and your team took. You describe in detail your actions in completing your task. Explain how you assess the situation, decided your actions, as well as share how you overcame unexpected challenges. And if you're a part of the team, you discuss how everyone involved themselves and what challenges each person faced, as well as asking a new question or coming up with a new hypothesis that you see throughout your research or whatever work you're doing. And you can also list out any new tasks that came from this and any subsequent actions that you took.
All right, and then kind of relating that to kind of what students are a little bit more used to. After they've assigned a task, when the day they turn in their presentations, that's not typically what ends up happening. And so you'll have students be like, well, this is what I did. I did this, 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 and this. And they're very able to they're able to identify like what roles they were assigned and what roles they actually did. What we want to know is like what you actually did after you were assigned these roles and any kind of additional not issues, like challenges. Additionally, when you go into the actions, but you end up communicating by listing out all of the actions and kind of telling your story. This also helps highlight initiative leadership skills, critical thinking, teamwork, adaptability, creativity whenever there is a problem and you do solve it, conflict resolution, time management, emotional intelligence. Stress runs high. People have a lot to do. These are students after all, and so they have a lot of commitments on top of doing this competition. And then if possible, if there are examples that they can showcase or that you can showcase while doing this, would be a great time to bring those up. Also, a wonderful time to bring in, since they do have access to their poster and their design brief. It is a symposium. They're not going to be by themselves, completely empty. And it's not just going to be their words. Because they'll have their academic poster right behind them. It's a great time to kind of point out any pictures or potentially reference any graphs if they have any that relate to whatever they're talking about, just to really like drive home the point about, you know, these are the actions we took, or, you know, there is a portion of the academic poster where they highlight the different iterations of the design. This would be a great way to kind of reference how the project evolved by pointing out those pictures as they're talking about their actions if the situation calls for it. Right, and then next slide.
All right, so the last one are results. You're sharing your outcome. You're closing, you're outlining what you accomplished and what you didn't accomplish, possibly. You specify the impact, if possible, quantify it with percentages, before and after comparisons. And like Milagro said, this is where you're going to be referencing your poster if you have anything on there, like pie graphs or bar graphs, and reflect on your learning. Share insights and what you learned from the experience. Mention any changes you would make in this in the similar situation in the future, or possibly what you would like to work on like the next step.
Our 3D printer kept failing, and it kept stopping when the product was halfway done. Thank you for asking. During our first attempt of bringing our prototype to life, we encountered an issue with our 3D printed filters. My teammate, Anna, our troubleshooting lead, noticed that our 3D prints were failing. We needed to find a way to ensure that our design could be printed. Anna had recommended to overcome this issue by updating our design, which in the end did not work. Then she decided to ask the robotics team to borrow their 3D printers and use it instead. In the end, we realized that the 3D printer we were using initially was faulty. By using a different 3D printer, we were able to successfully print.
Alrighty, so then what happens when you don't know the answer to a question the judge is asking you? You know, there always comes a time during a presentation when there's a question and you're not sure how to respond, how to move forward with it. Typically, the kind of polite / professional response that we train students and we are trained to do is just like, oh, that's a very good question, but you know, that's not something I've looked into. I can definitely get back to you on that after further investigation. Very polite, very professional. However, we do want to provide just slightly more context because we are answering in STAR. So we have created a little bit of a mnemonic. We won't delve too deep into it. We do have resources that do delve deeper into it and how it would come into play whenever it does, if it does. But to kind of remember the different avenues to take when you do come to a question or you are asked a question that you don't know the answer to. If you don't know the answer, dig for it, D-I-G. So the D in dig refers to deferring to. So that means if you are in a team and they ask you a question, say you were in charge of research and development, but they ask you a software question. You may not know all the software information, it's not your forte, but you know your partner does. So then what you do is you fill in STAR as you can, even if it's a little bit, it may be nothing. And you kind of, if you know the situation, you fill in that and then you say, you know, but my partner, you know, they are the ones in charge of the software designing. So, you know, they can probably tell you a little bit more about the tasks and actions, or they can tell you a little bit more about what had to take place during this, whatever the question is asking for. So you can defer to, you can like pass the ball on. Next, the I in development, or the I in dig stands for in development. So sometimes it does come where it's not necessarily you don't know the answer because like you don't have the knowledge, it's just you don't have the knowledge yet. Many times you'll get asked a question where it's something that you're still looking into, or it's something that you're planning to look into and you have a plan of action ready to go, but you didn't have enough time before before it was the day to present. So in which case you would tell the judge just that. You would fill in star, situation, task, actions, and then the results, just, you don't have them yet. You're still looking forward to them. You're excited to see them. But it is something that you did need more time for, and hopefully in the next iteration of the design, you'll be able to answer that question. So I is for in development. And then lastly, G, when you're digging, is for gap in research. Sometimes judges will ask a question that isn't necessarily relevant to your information that you're looking at, or you just didn't decide to look into it because you didn't deem it important enough. In which case you can still fill in star, but essentially it's the reasons. The result would be, well, we didn't continue looking into it, and here's why. Or you can kind of shift it where it's just like, that's not something that we shifted into, and then kind of evolve the topic to what you did look into, filling in star for all those things. But the important thing to kind of like pull from this is, like, even if you don't know the answer, you can still use star. It just means that you are going to have to play a little bit with who's speaking or what you respond with in terms of like the results or the actions or the tasks. Alrighty, so now that we've kind of gone over that, we are going to go ahead and actually try star for ourselves. We do have a small activity for you, which Amy will go ahead and take the lead on.
All right, so we're going to be giving you guys a scenario of being an electrical engineer. You know, you're given a project, an internship project. You're designing a circuit for a portable environment monitoring device. Your goals are energy efficiency and compactness. Your device monitors temperature, humidity, and air quality in remote locations. And your role is to design and prototype a circuit within those project constraints. Now, I'll add in the chat more information so you guys could take a look at how your project went, and basically answer the following question. Milagro, if you'd like to say it.
Alrighty, so with the background information that you've just been shared, this is essentially the range of your knowledge. So with this information that we've shared, in a STAR method structure, we would like you to answer, can you share a specific instance where you faced a challenging project or task? So the goal here would be to share the situation, the task, the action, and the results based on the information that we've given you. I believe Amy has kind of filled out an entire sheet with like a bunch of different scenarios and instances, as well as an engineering journal that you can also look into to kind of pick up knowledge. If you yourself have a little bit of electrical engineering experience, feel free to sprinkle that in there, as that is knowledge that you also hold. But if not, whatever it is that you have, you can pull from the information that we've given you will suffice for an answer. So we'll give about 5, 6, 7 minutes to kind of structure that out, allow everyone to kind of read through it. And actually, no, we'll do a full 10. Yeah, and that'll give everyone enough time to kind of read through it and structure their response. In the meantime, if we have any questions, I think we have enough time for like maybe 1 or 2 before we, in between while y'all are reading and working on that, and we'd be happy to take like 1 or 2 questions. So reminder, you are setting up the situation, the task, action, and results of this question. Are there any questions? about how to approach this.
So to clarify, I am taking the role of the person that says yourself, and I'm role playing that this is going to be a presentation that I'm giving about the materials that we're being presented with to practice the STAR delivery method. Is that what we're doing?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So
And
the
we're going
idea
to
here would,
present to you, like
pardon
give our,
me?
and we're going to present to you what.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We'll have some volunteers. If anyone is really, really psyched about their answer, they are welcome to share towards the very end. And then before we begin, I think Amy, you might be able to also answer this because you're an electrical engineering major yourself.
Yes, of course.
So I will ask you this question in a few minutes. But
Okay.
yes, the goal would be you were role playing as a student. And this is the project that you've been working on for months and months and months. And now you are at a symposium.
Okay.
And yeah, and so now I'm coming up to you as a judge or just someone who's insanely curious about your challenges.
Yeah.
You know, what are the challenges you face when building this?
I see. Okay. Thank you.
And timing wise, I do believe we'll have a little bit of time after the rest of our presentation. We only have a few more slides after this. If you have any questions then, but if you have any burning questions now, we do have a little bit of time to answer, just in case.
Oh, I have a question.
Yes.
Is this gonna be like an interview thing?
Uh,
How yeah. So
for the activity or
yeah, for the
generally?
activity.
I'm essentially just going to pose the question as if I had like walked up to your academic poster.
Okay.
And you've already kind of given me the spiel, or your team has kind of given me that verbal abstract. And so this is what I want to know. This is my question.
So how do you expect us to answer the question?
We'll ask for some volunteers. If you would like
Okay.
to share, you are completely welcome to. I'm sure we'll have a good amount of time for a few volunteers, but otherwise, I guess the goal of getting the volunteers and then with also Amy's answer,
Okay.
you can kind of compare your answer to other STAR answers and see maybe your situation is lacking a little bit of context, or maybe you can delve deeper in your actions. You know, comparatively, maybe you have the strongest answer and you just didn't want to volunteer.
It's my first time to actually attend something like this. My first time to understand STAR. Okay.
So I'm glad we are welcoming you into the world of STAR.
Thank you.
May I ask another question? This is my
Absolutely.
first time as a teacher with MESA, so I'm looking at
Mhm.
the engineering lab notebook example, and these
Yes.
are journal entries describing this week we did this week we did that, this challenge, this excitement, stuff like that. Is that something that I should be asking my students to do? Like, this is a good practice as an engineer?
Typically, yes.
Oh.
As you kind of read through the rules for all of the different MESA competitions, you will see that a lot of them do require engineering lab notebooks. But just generally keeping an engineering lab notebook or a lab notebook period, if you're kind of going more into like the biologies and the chemistries, the wet sciences, mostly because engineering lab notebooks become crucial when you start applying for patents. So if you create a new product and you go to a patent office and you're like, I want to claim this as mine, nobody else can make it, they need proof of that. They need proof of from conception to now when you are like presenting it to the patent office, they need to know how it was evolved, how you built it, what were all the steps. And so generally that's just a good thing to do when doing any kind of engineering. It also kind of helps you look back and see, like, well, what have we tried? What works? What doesn't? I know when I was in MESA, my advisor, he was very much a stickler for engineering notebooks. So he would give us composition journals as soon as it was time for us to do our competitions. And we were supposed to write everything down. Data, charts, tests, materials, whenever we changed it. If we changed an angle by 0.5 of a degree, we were supposed to write that down. And then that helped immensely whenever we were writing papers, because just like, well, what was the most efficient design? Well, it was 32.5 degrees turned this way, produce the best results. So that's what we're going to have to do.
I see. Interesting. So this is more of a just a generic, today we did, my primary role is I spent the day researching. It's not anything specific, but it does give a traceable evolution of the thought process and the project. So that's at least the basics of what we're going for in an engineering notebook.
Correct. Yeah. This is just very much kind of like for this activity, it was created, but like a real engineering lab notebook would be completely more thorough with more sketches, more drawings, more data.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Alrighty. Of course.
I believe that Manny also put in the chat examples if you would like to reference them. So
Awesome.
just to let you
Thank
know.
you, Manny. Alrighty. So I think we're about ready. I think some of you may have kind of like a general answer going on. If not, we can provide a little bit more time. But since Amy is an electrical engineer and you've presented at Abercrombie before, if I walked up to you and you gave me your spiel of your poster and I asked you, can you share a specific instance where you faced a challenging project or task? How would you respond to this with STAR?
All right, so let's go into detail how I would explain it. First of all, for situation, I would be like, yeah, during my internship, I faced a challenging project where I was tasked with designing a circuit for a portable environmental monitoring device. My responsibility was to design a prototype the circuit, emphasizing both energy, efficiency, and compactness as key goals. The challenge was making the portable device run on small battery for a long time. I selected a low power components, implemented sleep modes, and optimized the circuit board layout with the team's creative input, resulting in an effective and compact design through iterative prototyping and testing. And the optimized circuit design achieved a remarkable 30% reduction in power consumption, ensuring that the device could operate for an extended period on a small battery. Additionally, the compact layout met the size requirements, making the device highly portable. So as you could see, I didn't verbally say, oh, this is my situation, this is my task, action, results. I kind of just went with the flow and answered each one. So that's how a student should respond to questions like these. They should have it already in their mind, organized.
It's very much telling a story of the process of how she built this, how she designed this. And that's not to say that like you can't, throw in a like, my role or my tasks were, or, the results of this were just to kind of easier transition if that's something that helps transition. But, with practice and by doing STAR more and more, it just kind of becomes like, you don't need to necessarily use the like, well, the situation or the context was and my tasks were, and so this is what I did and the results were, it just kind of flows out. So based on this example, do we have any questions?
Yes, I do.
I do too. Go ahead.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it sounds like STAR is maybe used for the initial presentation to whomever the audience is, but that it's also used to answer whatever questions are posed to the presenters. Is that right? You can use STAR in all of those. Anytime you have to speak something, speak at STAR. Is that what you're saying?
Essentially, yeah. You
Okay.
can kind of extend STAR to be more than just answering a question. Typically, STAR is used more for like answering questions as like it is an interview technique. So we would ask a question and then STAR kind of provides that outline to like fully answer that question.
Okay.
However, you can kind of stretch that out and do STAR in like a very, maybe you have a 10-minute answer and you're just gonna structure it as STAR, and it would get you everything you would need to know for a presentation. But typically STAR is more used for like the small, or not smaller, but like the responses to questions that maybe take like 3 to 5 minutes instead of like
I
a full
see.
presentation.
Oh,
All right.
okay. Thank you.
Manny, I see you have a question from New Mexico.
Yes, my question is on this is for the symposium, correct?
Correct.
So would you say that it's, as a judge, and I don't know if you can answer this or not, but when the judges are coming around the tables, are they expecting like the 4 people from their team to answer and take on each one of these letters, or can only one person, and then maybe say, you know, ask another one of their teammates to say if anybody wants to add anything else, then they can? Or what is the expectation here? Because this is very precise, very concise. And so I think it would be very challenging if you try to incorporate it within the 4 teammates. But are the judges going to look at it as, well, we should have had participation from all of you versus just one person giving you the response? Does that make sense?
Yes. So
Okay.
it's going to be a little bit of both. So we do have some resources to share at the very end, and one of them is the
Okay.
STAR activity. It's a 1-pager that we have, and you actually get to see Amy again along with her partner and their summer research, and you can kind of see how they kind of transfer on and off, back and
Okay.
forth. So if a student, if they're asked a question that is kind of like it was mostly them that was working on that particular component or working on the information that surrounds that question, they're completely welcome to answer it that way, or they can divide and conquer. With symposiums, typically the team isn't presenting as a group. You kind of split up and then you answer questions. And if there's a question you can't really answer, then you pull in your partner and you're like, well, they kind of worked on this a little bit more, so they can probably tell you a little bit more. And then, you know, it kind of keeps it going. So you can, essentially the team could be talking to 4 people all at once, or they can talk to one person together as a unit. It just really depends on what the question is, what the situation is, and how comfortable they feel with that information.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then Danielle, I think it'll be our last question, and then we'll ask for a volunteer just in case anyone wants to.
Awesome. So in order to help students kind of prepare for this, what do you suggest kind of like giving them these scenarios and just having them practice the STAR method, or do you have them repeat this multiple times using their own research? I'm just trying to kind of envision how to provide them a lot of opportunities to practice this before they actually have to do it in front of a judge.
A little bit of both, actually. We do have some STAR scenarios where they can pull some activities. So we will have access so that your students can access this activity specifically. But we also have other activities where we have like different levels of, or different types of presentations. One of them is like an altered NEDC presentation that she has kind of like changed and then answers questions on. And again, Amy and her partner are also on that activity as well, and they're kind of giving like different levels of STAR. But if you have your students doing presentations and there's a Q&A portion at the end of it, like they're required to like spend 5 minutes answering questions, would it be a great time to practice STAR as well, just to kind of get into the habit of it? Situation, task, action, result. Because it is just a good way to kind of structure answers to questions. You can kind of throw it in whenever you really want to. If you want to do it specific to like scenarios and engineering scenarios, you totally can. But if you just want to implement it into their everyday life, it kind of makes it so that it becomes second nature to whatever it is that they're presenting or whatever questions they're answering. Awesome. All right, so we have about 5 minutes left.
So I want to make sure I understand what you're saying. So you could say like, you come into the MESA meeting and like the first 5 minutes, you're gonna just ask a student to talk about their week, use the STAR method, go, and that could be a way for them to practice just understanding how to structure those responses, right?
Yeah, sure. Okay. And you know, if they want to kind of structure their initial kind of like presentation to STAR, they can. But then also the important thing would be encouraging other students to ask them questions based on that information, so that they have the practice to like on their feet and they don't have any notes about it. STAR, situation, task, action, result. it becomes easier with practice because, like, you know, with STAR, when you're answering questions, you can't always predict whatever it is the judge or the audience is going to answer. So it's also about getting them to kind of like quickly think, okay, this is what I have to do, this is what I have to think of. And this is how I have to like build it really quick and then provide an answer within 1 to 2 minutes after the, well, technically it's like 30-ish seconds after the person answers or asks the question. And then Rudy.
I just got to mention here in Arizona, we have a teacher who at the very end of every MESA meeting, she has the small group working groups kind of report out. And I think that this could be something that she could utilize, right? She could say, as you report out, remember that kind of STAR method that we've learned about and talk about the work of your group in this context. And that might be another kind of strategy for that.
Absolutely. All right, so I think we're going to move on because we are kind of real close to the end of this and we do have a few more slides to share. All right. Oh, actually, it's just the wrap up. Fantastic. All righty. So hopefully everyone picked something up with STAR or was introduced to STAR for the very first time and kind of understands how to work it. If you want to learn a little bit more about how STAR comes into play for the symposium, that's going to be in the next session with Bill Pike and Luis Topete, if you're curious about that. And then also our other, or my other colleague, Eric, is also doing a piece on data, which will help strengthen the academic poster, which in turn helps kind of strengthen the STAR whenever you start like referring to your academic. But to kind of wrap it all up, a couple of months ago, I was approached by Luis Topete to, you know, kind of come up with a presentation that will help you know, those who have never really interacted with STAR, those who don't know what STAR is, come up with or understand what that method is all about and how to relate it back to the symposium presentation. So I was tasked with making this presentation, and of course I pulled in Amy, as she's an undergrad that helps us in the office a lot, and I know she has a lot of experience with research and she's done a couple of conferences. So we worked together to try to figure out what was the best way to relate it and parse up all that research. And Amy. Oh no, where did Amy go?
Right here. Sorry. All right. So, and then we have some resources here for you. Like we mentioned throughout the whole presentation, there's additional stuff. Again, you can reference again this presentation later on. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out at that email. Anything you want to add, Milagro?
Yes, just to kind of quickly break down everything in here. Module 7, I think that has been shared with everybody, is going to have a bunch of like overview, previous presentations from different winter convenings, and other tools and activities to kind of help you out with the different components. But if you go under the activities tab on module 7, you will also find a couple of STAR activities as well as some other slides that kind of help with the symposium and go over STAR and DIG and the I don't knows. Specifically, we do have a module 7 STAR activity. So that's that one pager I was telling everyone about earlier. It goes over STAR, what that is, how to break it down, some examples. It also has a little bit of an explanation about DIG. And then right under that is about 2 pages of an activity where you will have access to videos from different poster presentations. And that'll also give students a chance to identify, see if they can identify just by listening, like the situation, the task, action, result, and kind of get them into that habit of figuring out what is which and how to place. Today's activity is also going to be linked in this research page. And again, you will have access to the slide deck in case you do want to bring this back to your sites and try it out. Because we didn't go super into DIG, we do have DIG resources. Another one of our undergrads created a presentation that explains DIG a little bit better and as to why we would use that over just kind of like the very polite but professional. I don't know, I'll look into it, I'll get back to you. There's also a printable resource in the works that should be linked by Monday or Tuesday, but at the very least, you'll have that presentation ready to go and it just pulls from that place. And of course, if you have emails, feel free to email mesanedc@gmail.com. If you have any questions about this particular presentation, please feel free to mention us in the email or in the subject line so it gets forwarded to us. All right, and so that's the end of our presentation. Thank you very much. I know we're going a little bit above time and we have our next presenter come in. But of course, here's the feedback, the QR code. Please leave us any feedback or any questions that you might have. And I'll give it back to Priscilla so that she can kind of transfer everybody in here.
Manny from Arizona, can we put pause to the recording, please?